I just put we'll start soon here, so.
Yep.
Do you have to be subscribed?
No, you
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. Okay, now we can see ourselves there.
There we go.
Too far away.
Gracepoint Townhall, 701, Beauty. Oh, I'm gonna turn my volume
Turn my volume
down. There
on.
we go.
No, you put your volume off.
Yes,
We're going
yeah.
to get feedback.
Right, yeah. I'm just making sure, yeah.
Okay, so you guys are on, and people are enjoying your pre-chat because they're about 30 seconds behind. So
Oh, good.
Okay.
yeah.
You haven't said anything.
No, that's right.
Just wait till we get going.
Well, welcome this evening, and thank you, Grace Pointers, for tuning in, and we appreciate you taking the time in this different sort of a format for a town hall. And as you've already noticed, Stephan and Ralph and I are in the same bubble here, the Gracepoint LT bubble, and yeah, it's different times that we're living in. And the scripture I was thinking of for this evening that I thought I'd begin with is out of Hebrews chapter 13, or Hebrews chapter 12, sorry, where we read these words. At that time, his voice, meaning God's voice, shook the earth. But now he has promised, once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. The words once more indicate the removing of what can be shaken, that is, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe. And I thought that scripture is kind of fitting, you know, that there's a shaking going on in this time period. Really is, you know. And yet we have within us the kingdom of God, which cannot be shaken. So why don't I pray, and then we'll get into it. Almighty God, a God who is the creator, a God who is greater than all things, including this pandemic, a God who looks down upon the whole world, and it is all yours. And yet you look down on us individually and upon us as a community, Gracepoint Community Church, a church that desires to do your will and to follow you in this season of shaking. And so, God, we look to you. Guide us, we pray. Be in our midst. May we sense from you. May we hear from you. Even in the course of our evening, I ask. In your name I pray. Amen. Well, like I said, this is such a different format for a town hall. I'm just thinking, guys, that normally what we'd be doing is I would give the State of the Church address, right, where we'd kind of reflect back on the last year, you know, the goals of the last year, the vision of the last year, you know, and then kind of, you know, paint a picture for the future kind of thing. Then we'd have our town hall and gather afterwards, you know, and field live questions. But we're in a different time period now. We really are, you know. And but I believe that God is in control and God is guiding us, and that is the good thing. And an image that has been in my mind is that of the seasons, weather disruption. And you've got like a winter snowstorm or a blizzard, then you've got the winter season, and then you've got the ice age. And I want you to kind of think about that, Gracepoint Church, that when this thing started, I kind of, to be honest, thought it was like a blizzard, you know, like, hey, this was going to come in and then it was going to leave, you know, and we'd be back in church by Easter or whatever, you know, that this thing we'd sort of, you know, get through it. And then I was already in my mind picturing us gathering together and the celebration that would be, you know. And, well, that didn't happen, right? It went from the blizzard to winter. And winter is a season. It's longer, you know. A blizzard we count in days, but winter we count in months, right? And depending where you're from, it might be a little longer. Like my wife is from Saskatchewan, so they've got 6 months of sledding and 6 months of not so good sledding. You know, it's a long season there of winter. You know, and so the response is different in winter. Suddenly, during the blizzard, we were all thinking about relief. Like, okay, how do we help? Who needs help? That's the question we kept asking, right? And we wanted to respond. And many of you, Grace Pointers, you stepped forward to say, hey, I'll help. I'll deliver groceries. I'll do what I can to come alongside somebody. And then, it went from relief to recovery. And now it's like, okay, what are we going to do kind of for the long haul? How do we endure during this kind of winter season? So we go from blizzard to winter, then to ice age. Well, an ice age is years, right? And so how long will this pandemic last? Well, perhaps 12 months, 18 months. When is the vaccine coming? And an ice age then becomes a new normal. It becomes a different way of living. And, it means that for us in ministry, as we do church and lead this church, it's going to mean a new playbook. That in a sense, the old playbook from pre-COVID days doesn't work anymore. We've gone from a season to use another S word, a seismic shift. That there's been this shift that has happened, And so we've gone from relief to recovery, to use another R word, to a reformation. And, we've all heard of the Great Reformation when Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses to the Wittenberg door, 501 years ago. And perhaps another reformation is happening now in our time period. This is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that, in a sense, we are part of, in this new era. Another scripture that I'd like to share with you is 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 32. It says, from Issachar, men who understood the times and knew what Israel should do. And really, I think that's what God is calling us to now, to be people who understand the time that we're living in. Because it is an unusual time. It's a different time. And I borrowed from you, Ralph, this metaphor of a hybrid vehicle. And you see it there on the screen, that a hybrid car that's both a gas and electric car. And all of us tend to have a bias towards either or thinking. That we think, things are going to be one way or the other. But I really feel in this time period now, we need to have both and thinking. Because it's easy to think, what about the past? And wouldn't it be great to go back to what it used to be like? Or to project into the future and to say, forget about the past and we're just going to move into the future. But I think we really want to bring the best of both worlds together. I know I even see it in the business world. There's that well-known story about IBM. When they, supposedly, looked at their mainframe computers and then gave away some of their coding to a young guy named Steve Jobs, thinking, we won't need this, And then they almost went bankrupt, and they, of course, recovered from that and are, a big company now. But, during this pandemic, there's another company, JCPenney. I'm told that they became so future-oriented that it was all about the future, and they sort of forgot about their existing customers, the loyal ones, the ones who clipped the coupons or got the emails or waited for the sales, and became so future-oriented that they missed their customers and ended up going bankrupt. So we want to take the best from the past and look to the future also, to be both a digital and an analog church, because I get concerned when people go to one extreme or the other. Like some churches are saying that we're going digital only. Like this is the way. We don't need to gather again because they're thinking this is what we're going to do. This is the wave of the future. But I think, would you do that in other areas of life? Like if you did online dating, you were single, let's say, would you say, I'm never going to meet that person? We're just going to carry on this digital relationship? Well, no, And so we know as the people of God, we want to gather. Yeah, and so we do want to focus upon both, taking the best of the past and looking towards the future. And I think some of you Grace Pointers will be champions of both of those worlds. And I think just like I have glasses that help me with both being farsighted and nearsighted, and I can seamlessly look between both, that we can seamlessly look between digital and analog at the same time. Because each brings its pros and cons, right? Like in the digital world, there's lots of advantages, like things we can do like live streaming now, that Ralph and Stephan and I can have a meeting yesterday via Zoom, and we save, travel time in doing that. Sheila and I, we watch the show regularly, This Is Us. I don't even know when that show is actually on TV, because we PVR it and we just watch it, when it's convenient for us, I see sometimes in online how people can be very honest, sometimes very raw, brutally raw, that sometimes they don't necessarily do in person kind of thing. Again, there's all kinds of advantages with it. I mean, I've got on my phone, YouVersion, the Bible app, 400 million people have that, and it's run out of a local church. Digital can scale to an incredible amount, but it's also got some limitations. We're social beings. The Bible is full of one another commands of us, praying for one another, caring for one another, sharing with one another, etc. I worry about the future of kids' ministry if it just becomes digital. And I think I mentioned that to you guys yesterday, that I had talked to 2 children's pastors this week just to try and discern the times, like the men of Issachar. Like, what does it mean to do children's ministry in this Ice Age time period that we're living in? And so the risk is to kind of over-focus on one or the other. But they're not binary. Like I said, a hybrid, both and thinking. That we can be digital, but at the same time have powerful in-person experiences with God. And so it means, I think, for us as a church, that we got to keep pivoting in the future. We got to be agile as we move forward. And so we're going to keep, pressing into what God has for us. And as leaders, we're going to continually ask you, as the people of Gracepoint Church. And so we recently conducted a survey. And thank you so much for responding to the survey. There's over 180 of you that responded back. So let me just share a few results of that survey. And so we asked the question, have our online worship services helped you in your relationship with God, as well as feeling connected to the church and one another during this time? And so 57% of you said yes to that. 38% of you said somewhat, and 5% said not at all. So thanks very much for those responses. So 95% of you are saying yes or somewhat, it's helping you. And again, you've probably noticed we're tweaking things each week, trying to improve. And again, let us know how we can continually help you in your spiritual formation, because that's our desire as leaders, that you grow as a disciple of Jesus. And so if there's some way in terms of that digital format, whether it's on online service or some other way, because again, in the future, we may need to talk about other formats, how we can help you grow, we want to do that. Then we asked the question, if we were to host watch parties of our online Sunday service in our church building this summer with 50 people or less, would you attend? And so 57% of you said yes, 43% said no. And so I'll talk about that in a couple minutes, how we will respond to, the majority of you that said yes to that. I would attend gatherings of 30 to 50 in the Gracepoint building. And 63% of you said yes to that. I would attend gatherings of 30 to 50 in the Gracepoint parking lot. 60% of you said yes to that. I would attend gatherings of 10 to 20 in a backyard. 48% of you said yes to that. I would attend gatherings of 10 to 20 in someone's home. 21%. And so I'm hearing from you, you're more comfortable being outside in somebody's backyard as opposed to being in a home. I would attend gatherings of under 10 in someone's home, 28% said, and then I'm only comfortable in my home at this time, 18% of you said yes to that. So we've got a broad spectrum of responses there. And so thank you for your honesty on that. And again, we want to move forward being very honoring towards each of those responses on that. So for the majority of you who said you would attend a Gracepoint gathering in the building or a service, we're going to respond this summer. And so we are going to start offering on Tuesday evenings. We're going to begin recording our Sunday services. So we're going to back that up to give a few more days for some of the editing and to give an outing for Tuesday evenings at 7:30 that you can come, bring your lawn chair, and you can watch the recording of the service. Now, we're going to limit that to just 35 people, and so we'll have a registration process, and very similar to other places where you get asked, have you been exposed to COVID-19? Have you had a fever? Have you traveled outside the country in the last 14 days? We're going to have to ask some of those questions. We'll have a registration system, and so we'll have to keep track, and in fact, Fraser Health requires us to keep track for 30 days, anybody who's been in the building. And so we will have that registration system set up for that, and we will do that through our project management software that we have, and it'll be a no-touch service. So you got your lawn chair in the back of the car this summer, so you're going to be bringing in your lawn chair if you want to take part in that gathering. And so you bring your lawn chair in, you don't open the door, you don't shake hands or hug anybody, even though we love doing those, but can't do that in this time of social distancing. Again, no coffee, no offering plate, no communion elements, nothing like that. It'll be a completely no-touch service that we'll have. So Tuesday evenings, we'll have that at 7:30, and then on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. for those of you who said, hey, I would attend a watch party, because I've heard from some of you, you don't like the idea of just sitting alone in your condo, or perhaps you and your spouse in your townhouse watching the service by yourself, and maybe it was all right the first couple of weeks, but here we are 3 months in, and you'd like to kind of gather with some others. And so again, we're going to open that up to 45 people from Gracepoint, and again, a registration system for that's Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. during July and August. You can come and be part of a watch party of the service. And again, that'll be a no-touch service that'll be happening. Again, require registration, that kind of thing. So, I want us really to honor one another in this time period. And, the metaphor I've got in my mind is that of a traffic light. That, there's green, yellow, red. And in a sense, some of you Grace Pointers, you're green. You're ready to go. Open the doors. Why are you waiting so long, Rick? Just open the doors. I'm going to be there. When the email goes out, you're going to be ready to register, and boom, I want to be first. I want to be there. We get that, and many of you said that in the survey. Some of you are green and you want to go. Some of you are yellow in the survey, in the sense of what does a yellow light mean? It doesn't mean, speed up. There's certain Surrey drivers that think that, It does mean slow down, That's what we were told at one time or the other, And so, for some of you, you're saying, okay, I'm going to slow down, and I'm just going to wait. I'm going to see how it goes. And that's great. And others of you are like the red light. You're just going to kind of wait, And that is fine. You're the percentage that said, I'm just going to stay home. I'm most comfortable in my home with my family at the moment, And so we will continue to offer, digital offerings to help you in your spiritual formation in that way. To me, like I said on the vlog yesterday, that how we gather is even more important than when we gather. That we gather with that posture of humility and honoring one another. Let me give you just maybe quickly a staff update, and then I'll turn it over to Stephan and to Ralph. All our staff, of course, have been working hard, and we, during the coronavirus time period when we were working remotely, we'd Zoom every morning at 9 a.m. for prayer and updates and to talk about some of these things and to figure out what God is up to and to pray together and press into that. And now, as of June 1st, we're back in the building here, which is great. We're practicing social distancing, of course. We have a large boardroom set up in the lobby of the church there, and that we meet together there now. And so, we've been doing, of course, all kinds of things that you've seen, in terms of the care calling that happened, in terms of our D groups going on to Zoom, and many of our D groups, including mine, are still doing Zoom. Some have started to gather, and we're going to make our building available as of next week for D groups to use the front lobby area. Again, there's some protocol in place that you've got to read through, a fillable form that you've got to fill out. There's more steps involved now in terms of using the building. We instituted some new project management software. Many of you are using the app now. We launched the app during the coronavirus season. We're also next week going to be launching another app with regards to our directory. And so if I'm looking for Stephan's phone number and I don't happen to have it in my phone under contacts, I'll be able to use that directory, and that'll be through our app also. So we, of course, have done church online that you've seen. You've seen, those of you who are parents with kids in KU, you've seen that we've done now all KU is online also. Annika's done a great job there with the videos. I wanted to update you around Sunday night community dinner, and somebody submitted a question today around community dinner, what's happening there, so thank you for asking. And if you've got any other questions, go ahead and you can email me, rick@gracepoint.ca, or townhall@gracepoint.ca, or just ask in the chat here and we'll respond to the questions. But with regards to the community dinner, so Steve and I have had conversations, Jen and I have had conversations around the community dinner. And so we, of course, had to, again, pivot in this season. So we went from serving, around 200 meals on Sunday nights to giving away bagged lunches, to giving away gift cards, and yesterday we started again giving away a takeaway lunch. And so we had a few volunteers come into the kitchen. Again, they had to practice social distancing, so we only had 3 volunteers in there, and they put the lunches together. And so we had 38 people come through yesterday, and we had a couple volunteers in the parking lot, just kind of, again, from a safe distance, just mingling with our guests. Because one of the things we learned, or sorry, I should call them congregants, because they're our Sunday night dinner congregants, that one of the things we certainly learned through this coronavirus is that the meal has been very important, but also that social engagement and the interaction has also been very important that I've seen among our Sunday night congregants. And so we want to continue talking about how we can make Sunday night dinner church, and it will look different than Sunday morning church has traditionally done. But again, this is a season for pivoting, and we want to press into what God has for us and how we can best serve our congregants in the Sunday night dinner. It's been a difficult season, different season. I think of Gord and Freedom Session and how that changed, and suddenly we went to Zoom. And one of my favorite times of the year is Freedom Session graduation. That didn't happen this year, right? We weren't able to do graduation. I missed that. I miss those powerful God stories that normally happen in this room, Studio A. So what does the new normal look like? And even at staff this week, as we talked about this metaphor of blizzard, winter, and ice age, a number of the staff commented, I feel like I'm in the winter season, just trying to figure this thing out. And that's kind of where we're at, right? Because there's a shaking going on. But the good news is, as I read earlier, we've got within us a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And God is even greater than this pandemic. He sees what's happening, and He is going to guide us as a church. And so in that way, I feel it's an exciting future. Am I concerned about things? Yeah, like I mentioned about children's ministry, what does that look like in the future, and I'm, praying into that, and we're going to be talking about that as a staff Monday morning further, I know what it looks like, and try and figure that out into the unknown, but as best as we can to disciple parents and disciple kids, But I believe that as we follow God, He will lead and guide us. I, of course, miss seeing you guys as Grace Pointers. and it's not the same doing things over Zoom. But I believe we've got an exciting future ahead of us as we follow God into the future. Anyways, I could talk more, but I don't want to take up all the time. Why don't I turn it over to you, Stephan, and you're going to share something about the financials.
Sounds good. Well, I'm definitely one of those guys that likes the green light, and I'm ready to put the pedal to the metal, so to speak. My wife would tell me that I need to pull the reins in a little bit, but I get it. I get those people that are ready to get back and be together. I miss seeing your faces. I miss seeing people on a Sunday morning, and we just got to take it a day at a time, a week at a time, and hopefully we'll all see each other soon again. So as Rick mentioned, my name's Stephan Luking. I've been the treasurer at the church here now for 2 years. Took over from Arnold, and as Rick was talking about the analogy with J.C. Penney and being too forward-thinking, I was thinking the treasurer before me was Arnold Machel, and he was forward-thinking, but in a good way. And I think he set the foundation for a solid financial position that the church is in right now, and we're building off that foundation in this time of COVID. So hopefully everyone had a chance to see the 2019 financial statements that were sent out a couple of weeks ago. I'm guessing most of you aren't really interested in all the details, so I'll just kind of keep it light and recap a couple of the bigger numbers. Although we had a $1 million budget target for revenues, Gracepointers were extremely generous and ended up giving well over $1.2 million, which included the community dinner fundraiser, missions fundraising, and money directed toward the G610 fund. This resulted in a $75,000 surplus, which allowed us to add $100,000 to our contingency fund, bringing the total to $372,000 now. And we also had $200,000 of operating cash in the bank account. So we ended up at the end of 2019 in a really strong position, and really it's thanks to the generosity of all you Gracepointers. So where does that take us now? I'm not sure how well you can see my graph or not online, but if you look at the graph, I'm just going to step over here for a second. You can see we actually started off the year, January and February, in a really positive position. We were anywhere from 10 to 15% above our giving from last year, and things were looking really positive. And to be honest, they still are positive. Once COVID hit, we did drop a little bit, and on average, we're down about, I'd say $2,000 a week. But we're actually not in a bad financial position. We have lost some revenue from wind and tide, as well as some revenue from rentals from events that happen at the church. But really, I've got more positive news to give than negative news. Although the weekly giving is down, our overall giving is up due to the early month surpluses and a couple of large gifts that came in April. We had one gift of $31,000 that just helped boost our revenues. So if you could just switch to the next slide. On top of that, not a single family has canceled their regular giving. We've had 2 new families start giving, and 14 families have registered for online giving. And a handful of families have even increased their giving. So if you haven't signed up for online giving, you can do this online via the website, or if you're not technically savvy, you could just contact Tracy at the church, and I'm sure she'd be able to help you get set up with some automatic giving. If you look at the graph here, you can see that the green line is last year's total giving, where we ended up at this time last year we were at about 371,000. And the red line is what's happened to date, and COVID happened right about here, and because of this one-time gift of $31,000, we actually are still about $30,000 ahead of last year's giving at this time. Having said that, we don't want to put the brakes on. This is where we want to keep the pedal to the metal and definitely keep giving the way you have been. Because we just don't know what the future holds. We don't know what the fall is going to look like, and but just keep doing what you're doing. Keep being generous. Just to give you some idea of some of the things we've done since COVID started, we met as an LT, and we had no idea what the future was going to look like and what our finances were going to be like. So as a cautionary measure, the LT instructed staff to hold off on capital expenditures. And in our budget, we've got about $110,000. So we do have a little bit of flexibility there. But at the same time, we also agreed that the church should be uber generous in this uncertain time and go to the extreme measure if necessary to help people that are in need. Things turned out not as bad as we expected. We found that people weren't quite as in need. You know, there are people that have lost their jobs, and there are people that have been able to survive on some of their savings. We did end up giving out about $2,500 in gift cards, and we still have over or almost $20,000 in our G610 fund to help out people that are in need. So if you are one of those people that are in need, don't be shy. Let the church know we're here to help, and we want to help. Just send an email, send it to Rick, send it to info@Gracepoint, because we do want to hear from you, and we do want to help you. So seeing it's June and it's the end of school, and with school comes report cards, I thought I'd give us a grade of where we're at during this COVID time. And really, because of the generous giving of you Grace Pointers, we're really in an A position, and we are really well positioned. I think God has prepared us for this time, and we have the financial means, and things are good, and we don't know what the future holds, but we have some flexibility, and hopefully things continue in a positive manner, and we end off the year on a positive note.
No, thank you, Stephan. I agree. I'd even give an A+ to Gracepoint Church. You guys are absolutely awesome. So thank you in all ways, including in your generosity. And so somebody had asked the question, why don't I just answer it now since we're talking about finances? I asked the question around an offering, and we're not taking an offering during the worship gathering, of course, because it's digital. And I guess, Stephan and I were even talking before that we could put something up on the screen, and I guess, we have mentioned it a few times. You mentioned around, the aspect of digital giving or automated giving that people can do. And so thank you again for that. Someone asked around the G610 fund, which I think you've addressed. And I would just reiterate too, if you have a need, we as a church want to help you. We want to come alongside you as best as we can. All right, why don't I turn it over to you now, sure. Ralph?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so what you've heard here is Rick's overview representing, if you will, staff and the staff leadership of the church. Stephan has given us the financial overview, which is very important because we are an organization that has costs, salaries, and all the rest of that. So I would echo what's already been said to say thank you for your faithfulness in your giving. Because that is really important, and that is through the midst of this a form of obedience and worship. So we deeply appreciate your ongoing support, so thank you. So what I want to do for a minute is just kind of let you know what, as an eldership team, we've been doing since March, because quite frankly, we have our monthly meeting. So just a very quick overview, we meet as a team, we look at what new, if you will, agenda items have emerged over the last month. They come on, but we'll also talk strategically about where we're going as a church relating to staff and outreach and so forth. And then we kind of work through stuff that relates to leading the church and serving our members. Well, we've still been doing that, but how we've done it now as of March 19th, that was the last time we met physically in the building. And then we went to pretty much from the end of March through to May 7th, almost every week. There were a few exceptions. It was a weekly Zoom meeting. So we would all log in, and we would first, when this thing first hit, as much as anybody else, we were all going, how are you doing? And so we would spend time at the beginning literally doing a check-in because, we're the elders and we're the LT, but we're people just like you who are going through this in our families and our jobs and our lives. So it was, excuse me, I don't want to call it group therapy, because it wasn't that as much as it was group sharing and group connection, right? Because as a leadership team, we really wanted to keep the team going. And it was neat, because there were all, little squares, and someone would disappear, they'd walk, we saw, turn your camera off before you do that kind of stuff, right? No, it wasn't anything bad, so just so we're clear here. But, we're all learning together as we're virtually meeting, and so it's kind of interesting as we connect off a little screen, and then as we went through this a little bit more, we started finding our rhythm, and the meetings were very productive, and we were able to talk about things that were not only personal and where we were at, but really related to Pastor Rick and the staff, and kind of, so how are you guys doing and what's going on? And then the other thing that we did was to pass on, because I know Ron and I were in the same D group, and we would hear, as other elders did from their D group, or people that they were friends with would say, hey, what are you guys doing relating to? And if we had the answer, we would give it, and if we didn't, that was some of the stuff that you started doing, Rick, in the weekly video, and then some of the emails. But what we heard was an increased desire for communication. So you've seen the response to that, and I would encourage you again, that if there's more of something you want to hear or see, let us know what that looks like so that we can respond both as staff and as elders. So we had our Zoom meetings, and then as of May 14th, we started meeting again here. We did the social distancing upstairs, so we've got the space, as you refer to the lobby boardroom, or I like how you put that, right? And so now we've gone to a bi-weekly format. So again, what we're doing is we are meeting every 2 weeks, and we're meeting upstairs, and we're going to follow the protocol and the guidelines as the rest of us have to. And but we're but the business, if I can use that term, in terms of the way we serve, that will continue on. Kind of future focused, I just want to pick up on what you've said, Rick. I threw the word hybrid in a couple of weeks ago in a conversation, and that resonated for Rick because, and you saw his image on the screen earlier, I think that is a good framework, because I think we can all relate to that hybrid model. I drove here tonight in a hybrid car, right? So for some of us, you have one of those in your driveway or your garage. So it's a good analogy that represents the kind of the current state. And we're all hearing about the new normal. Well, at some point, the new is going to drop and it's going to be normal. And so what I want to do here, Rick, is just kind of speak a little bit to some of the things that as an LT we've been talking about that relate to the future of where we're going as a church. So to be clear, the first thing is technology should not, and we don't want it to replace worship and gathering and connection, right? Because we are called in Acts, and if you just see the biblical references, we are called to be community. We're brothers and sisters. Gathering is important, and we do not want to stop doing that. But we have to do it safely, we have to do it healthily, I don't know if that's a word, and wisely. So we will do that, but we will get back to gathering. So whether it's a Sunday night dinner, even the D groups and so forth. But the other thing with that hybrid, I think, and another word that's popular right now is pivot. We're looking at this from an LT point of view as what is the future, not the JCPenney future, but the church future. And we won't go into that in detail, but if you have questions or thoughts, you can certainly connect with us. But this is a very serious thing because, as Rick said, God has come in and he has allowed not interruption, but disruption, right? And I've been thinking about that because we can all get interruptions in our life. You get sick, the car breaks down, something happens and it's an interruption and it's annoyance and you go, ugh. Well, this is not an interruption. It's gone well past that. And so we have to learn how to operate in a disrupted environment now. And so we will continue to do that. But with that disruption and the winter season and the ice age that Rick referred to, I think that what's going to happen is when we come out of this, whenever that'll be, whether it's 12 months, 18 months, whatever the number is, and it's not about the number, it's more about where we're going, I think we will find that we will have had more opportunities. And that's what I'd like to focus on, because that's what I'm really sensing from the LT and from staff, is that we're not worried about this, because we know who's in charge. We're trying to discern where we're being led and what is being said to us, both as staff and elders, and then with you folks joining in and sharing, right? Because, again, we're a community. So I can't say more than that because I don't know what it'll be, but I believe that we will move to another era, not just in terms of Gracepoint, but I think the church. And quite frankly, we were just talking about that in our D group. It's exciting, and I hope you're excited about this. And I want to encourage you, because this really comes down to our faith, that this is not a time for us to be fearful who know the Lord and our salvation is assured. That's not about now being arrogant and cocky through this. It's about humbly serving, but having that sense of confidence that we can go out and be God's people, be that salt and that light. So I'm inviting you to think about how you can do that and how we can all partner together to do that. And so to that end, that means there's going to be flexibility in formats, there's going to be flexibility in how we communicate and connect, and we're going to look at technology and all the things that are presented to us to see how we can leverage that. And what particularly excites me is when I've heard from at some of our meetings where, and Stephan, you were saying this, where on Sundays, you and your kids, you guys, I don't know if it's 10 or 11, but we're hearing that there's different times and there's new rhythms with families. So maybe it's after breakfast, maybe it's before brunch, maybe it's after lunch. But we're hearing of new formats and gatherings where the service becomes the gathering point for family. Whereas before, well, we're upstairs and the kids are down here in KU, which is, that's fine. But now it's like there's something happening here, and I think that's neat. So as we remain engaged and connected, we encourage you to let us know what else we can do for you. Rick touched on that already. And Ron, last night, I shout out to you because the D group were saying, yeah, tomorrow you guys are going to watch. And Ron made the point, he said, we want to hear from you because it was, what are you guys going to say? Like, is that something we need to know? And it's like, no, we want to hear from you. So I'm going to end on that, Rick. It's just, we've done an update. This is 2 months later because in April we weren't even really supposed to do this, so we've moved it. But what we've been thinking, broadly speaking, is maybe we'll do another one of these as we come out of the summer. Right, maybe another virtual town hall, and, excuse me, give you an update. Maybe another one in December, but that's where I'd invite you to give us the feedback, how often you want to hear from us without, oh, there they go again, right? But this whole connection and interaction is important, but we'll keep you posted until we can resume regular programming, whatever that means. And then really it's a standing invitation to connect with your elders, connect through your D group, because that gets back to us, but communicate, communicate, communicate. Please ask the questions. Thanks.
No, thank you, Ralph, for that. And yeah, who knows what the future formats even look like, right? And it could be, again, in this hybrid, that we will do some streaming in the future like this, because let's face it, maybe in January in a winter night, it's pouring rain, maybe people don't want to go out in the evening for a meeting, you know, that we can stream something like this. And then at other times, we will do a, you know, kind of a traditional town hall after church, a Sunday gathering kind of thing, you
let
know?
me say something,
And
Rick.
kind of getting the best of both, right?
You raise a really good point, because in the past, and we can all relate to this if we're honest, it's like, oh, there's a thing, yeah, oh, I don't know, it's raining, it's kind of a little cold, I'm not going to go. So you stay home and you watch Netflix. Well, if we have the option to engage you and connect you, you go, I don't feel like going out because it's a little dangerous or I just don't feel safe, I can stay connected. And I think this is part of the hybrid. And I want that to really come through, because it's not either or, it's more of and. And I think that's our future, is more of, it's not just if we don't have that, then we have nothing. Now we have this and, right? So think and.
Right, yeah, both and thinking. I think definitely it's going to be that way. And again, we don't know. Like I was thinking today, I thought, like in the future, yeah, will we suddenly have, or will we eventually have 400 plus people gathering on a Sunday morning in our building? Or will we have microsites, you know, because of a limitation that, again, the government imposes on us, right, of a certain size of gathering? Like, we don't know. Yeah. But we're going to press into what God has for us, because we're going to continue to be a disciple-making movement here at Gracepoint. Let me maybe answer a couple other questions that came through, and feel free in the chat there, any of you that are there, to ask any other questions. Somebody emailed in today and they said, we like that we got a call at the beginning of the church shutdown. We said we were fine, just wondering if we're still reaching out to the congregation. We think it's important. And Stephan, I know you were one of the care callers, so thank you for doing that. And it sounds like it was a great experience for you to do that.
It was. It was a great way to connect with people that I normally wouldn't connect with on a Sunday morning, and just got to know a few other families, and quite enjoyed it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we've even talked as LT and as staff to, again, make this a rhythm, you know? It's kind of old school in the sense of we're picking up a phone, right? But it's a good old school kind of way of connecting with others. Yeah. And so, yeah, we're going to continue to do that, like I said, as part of a rhythm. We may do another round of care calling here soon, you know, if we sense that, okay, we want to reach out again broadly to our congregation. Ralph, you said about the D groups. I know many of our D groups are meeting over the summer, and in fact, we've asked that question, how many D groups are continuing to meet, whether via Zoom or have started some in-person gatherings to help us discern what types of gatherings we should craft as staff, and again, how we can best be supporting people. Our primary support mechanism is the D group, but again, for the 1/3 of Grace Pointers that aren't part of a D group, we again want to connect with you and are discerning how to best do that. Another question came through around KU and youth. Great question. So youth obviously had to pivot, to use your word there, Ralph. You know, it suddenly, we went from meeting here on Thursdays to suddenly not meeting on Thursdays. And we utilize the tool of Zoom. And so, you know, all of our youth leaders and youth met on Thursday evenings with Zoom. And, you know, I would say in some ways it was good in the sense of we had good input in terms of the number of kids who were participating. But it does have a limitation, of course, because it's a screen, you know. And so Pastor Chris would do some teaching, you know, on to the large group. We also used a curriculum as part of the teaching recently, and then we did on Zoom what's called breakout rooms, and so the youth leaders would meet with some of their youth in the breakout rooms. And so they've started as of last week. Chris sent out a survey to the parents in terms of the comfort level, in terms of gathering, and so we've started some small group gatherings, you know, outside in people's backyards. There was one group last Thursday evening that met here at the church parking lot, and again, they did some social distancing, but did some in-person gathering. And so our youth is going to continue to meet through the summer, and again, we're discerning how best to do it. Tonight they're doing Zoom, so that's what they're back doing tonight for youth. And again, we're figuring this thing out as we go along. How can we best disciple the youth in this time period? How can we reach out to other disenfranchised or bored youth? I mean, we're asking ourselves all kinds of questions. We're going to be bringing another intern on this fall that we've committed to, Johnny, to be an intern in our church, and so he's going to help us also, you know, in terms of figuring this stuff out, along with Louisa and with Pastor Chris. And in regards to KU, somebody asked that question. As I said earlier, this kind of concerns me. Like, what does the future look like? We've been doing what most churches are doing now, particularly larger churches, in that they're producing digital content for the kids to watch. You know, and so Annika, our KU director, she's been just knocking it out of the park, producing these great videos for the kids. I absolutely love them. I mean, she can do impersonations. She's been dressing up. She's utilized some of the families from the church to be part of it. I think we've had about 7 different families who've contributed to that. So it's been great. Now, I just wonder sometimes, is that long-term the best format? Because, like, does that help kids to work out their salvation? That's a question I'm going to be asking the staff on Monday morning. Like, we are going to have to grapple with this, you know, because I kind of fear that as you produce video after video, because I talked to those 2 children's pastors this week, and the one said they're, you know, the retention rate is definitely dropping off in terms of how many families or kids are watching the videos from his particular church, you know. And so again, we're going to have to grapple with this as a staff and figure this out. And again, parents, you know, get back to us on that and how best we can. In fact, today Tracy and I were brainstorming a couple ideas, you know, and just, I won't bother saying what they are until we run them by staff, kind of thing. But yeah, we want to figure this thing out, and we got to figure this thing out together, you know, because I don't want to lose a whole generation of kids who, you know, don't have a chance to go to church for the next 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever this thing's going to be like.
And Rick, I want to just link into what you're saying, because Rick brings up a good point. We've heard this about the children, but I'm also wondering, And this is where we'd love to hear from you and people that you know, and so that you may know of somebody who's not watching tonight, and it may get to a conversation where, did you watch the town hall? And when they talked about, and they may say, no, I didn't watch. This is where you can make that connection. You can be the link, because as it relates to the kids, and I'll take it a step further, because we just had somebody that, a member of the church, reach out through Steve, and we've had a number of people join our D group. And what I'm sensing, both with the adults, and I got to believe this is happening with the kids, and this is where we want to hear from all of you, is let us know, because we're in these transitionary times, and we're moving into this, we'll stay with the hybrid for the kind of framework, but I think there's some opportunities in that, but we need to know, are people connecting with us because of this that we didn't have connect before, right? Because I remember you told a story at one of the LT meetings where, I don't think it was Chris, but it was someone that Chris knew, this fellow was teaching, and he had his Zoom, and he was at a school, and then some of the students came in, he said, this is like, you got to be really careful, because your day job, he's going,
Right,
I'm
he was
not
a
preaching.
teacher in his day job, in the Zoom account.
But Rick,
and
tell
then
that
some
story,
of the
'cause
kids,
this is what is-
some of the kids from
Yeah.
the class then joined. He also works part-time as a youth pastor.
Yeah.
Joined the youth group, so that's when the teacher said, whoa, you got to ask your parents if this is okay to do. And they went and asked their parents, and the parents were like, yeah, sure, join in, keep busy, do something. And they became part of that youth group. And so Chris is part of a Surrey Youth Pastors Network, and so that was one of the other youth pastors that shared that.
But that's the point here, right? Because we're a lot of us are going, I want to go back to church, and we all do. At the same time, we have to be mindful and have the antennas up, and like there is stuff happening. And that's the kind of stuff we'd love to hear from you guys, not only anecdotally, but also, is there an idea in that for us that we can be looking at as we move forward as a church to say, okay, we're going to, as Rick said, we're going through this for a while. So we got to keep changing, like your dashboard. We got to turn the volume up or down, the bass, the treble, right? We're going to play with the dials a bit here.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I just see on the chat also was mentioned, and I forgot to mention it, around GEMS. And so our Thursday evening GEMS girls group, they had a graduation tonight that actually happened via Zoom. And kudos to Sheena's on there tonight, and just mention that. And I see Craig and Linda are on there also. And Linda and Sheena and the other ladies there have just done a fantastic job in the discipling of those girls on Thursday evening. So thank you so much for that. For the gems there. Okay, there's also a question that's come in that prior to COVID, Gracepoint was seeking a full-time children's pastor. In light of your comments about the format of KU in the future, can you comment on how that search is going? Did I say somebody's going to ask that question? Thank you for that question. So pre-COVID days, I did a number of interviews with people, and including a second interview with a candidate, and I felt good around that candidate, so I invited one of our elders, who's a volunteer here in KU, Stephanie, to join me for an interview, and then Chris, our youth pastor, and so the three of us did a Zoom, or whatever the format was back then, interview with this individual, and then the coronavirus hit. Yeah, and so it's kind of put a pause on that, because of course we're not gathering, and again the delivery of KU has shifted now to this digital format, and I appreciate that it's still in our budget for 2020 to be able to do it, because I've got a huge heart for next generation and the children and the families, and for us to be able to eventually do that, at the right time to move ahead with that, I'm a little leery doing hiring in this season, of course, when 25% of churches have either laid off staff or have reduced the hours of staff people, And so I've known some people who've been in that boat. But are we committed to next generation? Absolutely. Are we committed to have a full-time staff member in that role, helping us in the discipling and equipping of families and children? Absolutely. And I think I would speak for all the LT on that,
I'd
right?
like to add, actually, this is a really important point. You're right, and whoever asked thank you. We have been, in the last 5-6 months, we addressed this quite in depth at our meetings, and then, as you say, COVID hit. And so it would be irresponsible, I think, to hire someone now, given we don't know timeframes and all the rest of that. But yeah, this is definitely, Pastor Rick and the staff and us, this has been a priority issue. And again, unfortunately, we got to work through what we've been given here, but that is an area that we have identified as a church that we need to get some stability, strength, and then some forward movement in. So yeah, this whoever asked, thank you, and yes, it's up there.
Mm-hmm. Another question came in around, there's a men's hike happening on Saturday. There is at 9 a.m. A bunch of us are going to hike in the watershed. Somebody's asking around a virtual ladies strawberry tea. And again, nothing is planned at this time, but that's not to say that leaders can emerge in this season. Again, how do you do a strawberry tea virtually? I don't know, but maybe we've got some creatives that can make it happen there, including the person who asked this question, because it is a new season that we do want. Okay, yeah. We do want to pivot things, and again, do want to serve as best as we can in this time period. Yeah.
Rick, again, I'm going to use the word pivot on this. I think this is a good question, because this is the stuff we want to hear, but we don't know how it'll be done. And we distributed a questionnaire through the D groups, and then Rick talked about in one of the sermons about the matrix, right? Mm-hmm. And the response on that has not been as strong as the survey, because that's a little bit more, what do you want to do? And people yeah, I want to do this, I want to red, yellow, or green, right? Mm-hmm. But this goes back to conversations we've had with you guys before, when we've had, when we've been upstairs and we're all, after a Sunday service. This comes down to engagement, and this is me now just talking to fellow Grace Pointers. I think we're in a season where it's not, in the past, someone would pick it up and do it. Well, we can't, or on a limited basis, come into the building. This is where I really believe, and we've talked before about the nudge, is God calling you to something? So when you looked at that matrix, there were a couple of boxes and there was a blank. And I'd encourage you, if you didn't submit that, because it was kind of open-ended and we realized that. So some people said, well, where's it going? We said, well, we want to know, give us some ideas, and then we're going to try to make the connection. We are going to follow up on that. But this is where the strawberry tea, or a hike, or a virtual car wash, or I don't know where this will go, but this is the kind of stuff where if you have an idea, come forward and be the leader of that, be the initiator, right? Because it isn't, here guys, do this. We're in a different season now, and the playing field has changed, and so we want to know what our members are thinking and prepared to lead on, not just say, here's something you should do. It's like, let's vet it and make sure, and then let's figure out how we can do it collectively.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, as an LT, I think we were blown away by the number of people that came out and said, I want to help, I want to volunteer. And an example is, I don't know if you've driven by the church lately, but church parking lot looks the best it's ever looked. And we've had a volunteer that's come out and has been working on the landscaping. I think it's every day, hasn't it, since COVID started? 4 or 5 hours a day. It's incredible. And so it's just amazing what people do and how they step up in a time of need. And it's been very humbling.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, and even as we were talking, guys, there's a couple ladies that are chatting on here about a women's hike. So that's a great thing, and they can connect with one another and make that happen, and that's great. We want to see some organic stuff rising up here, and because I believe God is at work.
And to that point, Rick, I think this is exactly why we wanted to do this. Mm-hmm. We want to get you guys connecting. It's like, let's use this as a starting point, but community doesn't just have to happen at church. It will again when we worship together, but we're community. Right? Mm-hmm. And this is, I think, a prime opportunity for us to step out and, as I like to call it, step up. So if you want to step out and up and lead something like this, there's no limit on ideas and opportunities if you do it safely and be smart about it.
Mm-hmm. Someone else is asking a question around uniting churches together and to be praying for our country, the current situation, first responders, that sort of thing. And as I mentioned, we as a staff have been praying each morning through COVID-19 for first responders, as well as, a vaccine, a cure, all kinds of areas, those who are sick, etc. Our denomination also has had a weekly prayer time. So the MB churches across BC, we have gathered to pray, again, via Zoom. And that, in some ways, in the midst of this bad stuff of the pandemic, that's been a good thing that has emerged, Again, churches uniting like that. And so, I think it's, in the 5 years that I've been the pastor here at Gracepoint, I think that's the first time that our denomination has done that sort of a thing, and that's a good thing. We've also had via Multiply, and I've been a part of a couple of them, just some international praying that has happened also, and so that's been neat too, just connecting with others in other countries. Their situations are different, but again, we're all reaching up to the same God. And so that's been happening. So there's been a little bit of that kind of movement. I said even to the staff the other day that, I would love to do in this time period just a church-wide prayer meeting, kind of that old school kind of church prayer meeting. But again, we've got the social distancing, thing that's happening now. But perhaps when we do gather again in our building for some of those watch parties and, the recording of the service, that we will do that in some format, right? Again, we can't gather in a circle to pray or can't, lay hands on each other and that sort of thing, but we are obviously a people called to prayer. And in fact, you'll see in the program this Sunday, and again, the program is now via app, and so make sure you get that app from the Google Play or the Apple App Store, that on the app you see the program, and on the program you'll see this next Wednesday coming up. We're going to have drive-by praying happening here at the church, and so Gord and the prayer team, a few of them will be available there. You can come with your car at 7 o'clock, and they'll have masks on. They'll stay at least 2 meters apart, but they will pray for you, next Wednesday at 7 p.m. So again, this is a season we've got to just try some of these things, different ways, different formats of praying.
And Rick, something that not everyone would know, just if you wouldn't mind, because I'm just thinking where you shared with us that there's the pastors on the peninsula, or what's it called? Because there's been outreach. So
right, yes.
Just that people know we're engaged and connected. So Rick's part of that.
Mm-hmm.
You also did an article for, what was it?
Peace Arch News.
Yeah, right. Just about this. So there's stuff happening not everybody may know. And again, we just want to kind of throw some tidbits out so that you guys know there's all this stuff happening, perhaps a little bit behind the scenes for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Someone else is asking a question around, do we have any action plans as to make sure members of the BIPOC community are heard and acknowledged in our church and leadership, And so I would say definitely. I even thought of around this Sunday, and again, it's because we can't do this sort of thing. As you guys know, I love to do interviews on the stage at church, and I would love to have some people from the Indigenous community and some people, from visible minorities up on the stage with me to do some sort of a interview. But we can't do that at this time period. We've obviously been praying into that as a church. I'm going to address it in my sermon on Sunday, and so we're going to continue to be a voice and a voice of love in the midst of this time that is very polarized, in North America, and show the Jesus way. So thank you for asking that question, and I would even ask again for your input on that and help lead us in that way. Okay, I not seeing any other questions here coming in.
From the floor, any questions? We don't have a lot of people. We got a few people here.
For those of you who
The
are
elders
watching,
came.
there's 4 or 5 out there. I think we did we promise about an hour? I don't even remember what we had said,
thought we were going for 3 hours or something.
3 hours, yeah.
There are some home movies now, videos from
Okay,
Christmas. Yeah.
But I don't know if you guys have anything to say in closing. But one thing maybe I'll say is I'm continually reminded by the Lord that He is at work in ways that I don't necessarily see. I just sort of get that nudge or that inkling, that there's stuff happening, Rick, that you don't know about, that you don't see yet. Because it's easy just to walk by sight, right, and see what we don't have, as opposed to what we do have and what could be. You used the word opportunity earlier, Ralph, and as leaders, we want to be continually looking for opportunities, particularly those God opportunities that He sends our way. And I believe at the right time, He will reveal those, and it means us having a sensitivity to Him on what He is saying. And so, again, to follow the one who called His first disciples with those 2 simple words, follow me. And we've got to do the same now, 2,000 years later, right? We just follow Him as He speaks, and we hear, and we respond, and we obey. And I believe God's got great things in store for Gracepoint in the future. I'm excited to be part of that. Do I know what it looks like? No. But am I willing to roll up my sleeves and dig in and find out? Yes, And together we'll pray and we'll seek and we'll talk and we'll have these sort of formats and dialogues afterwards. And, next week at LT, we'll debrief this kind of stuff. And as staff on Monday morning, we'll debrief and talk. And I think as we continue to pray and grapple with this, that God will lead and guide us in this.
Well, but Rick, 2 weeks ago, just to this point, those of you who have been coming for a while, when Rick first joined us as pastor, and he did different themes, I reminded him, I think it was 2 weeks ago when we had the last LT, that one of his first sermon series themes, or not that far, into it after he joined us, was follow the cloud. And that reminded me, I think, kind of what you're saying right now, Rick, because when the Israelites spent 40 years wandering around in the desert, they didn't know where they were going, but by the fire by night and the cloud by day. So it was kind of like, watch me. This was God saying, okay, when that moves, you move. And that was what I reminded just throughout to the LT, because that series that Rick did years ago really spoke to me, because it wasn't just, that's a great series, Rick. It's a reminder that God is in control. And as the Israelites, they were dependent on Him completely for 40 years, and He provided. And He said, you move now, and when He said stay, they stayed, and when He said move, they move. And I think that's a great reminder for us today, because we often forget what our history and our heritage is as believers, what we are part of. And I think, to your point, Rick, when God, He's saying stop now. It's pretty clear, right? Yeah. But He's saying listen, because I'm going to do something. And so when He reveals through, metaphorically, clouds and fires, whatever He does, we'll follow. And that's what I would affirm Rick and our staff, and just kind of remind us to be open to that, because I think God has spoken and He continues to speak, and I think we should expect Him to. But He's God, we're not, so we don't know how and what He's going to do, but we get to be part of it when He chooses, right?
Stephan, you got anything else to add?
I don't think so.
I
I
think
thought
so,
there were going
okay.
to be some hard questions.
No,
but,
yeah. That somebody would ask how much are we saving on paper now that we're not printing programs?
So what are electricity costs? How much have they gone down percentage-wise?
Well, they definitely have gone down, but the building is still here and the lights still get turned on, but there definitely are savings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, should we wrap it up with that?
And before we do, Rick, if you want to close in prayer, whatever, I just want to say on behalf of the congregation, thank you to Greg's here, staff, right?
Yeah.
Rick, and our staff members, because you've been working in difficult situations, and it's been challenging. So thank you for what you've been doing and how you've been serving us. Thank you for the elders. You guys have stepped up. We've been meeting a whole lot more. We've been zooming around, right? But that can take a bit of a toll because it's a new format, and we've been fairly engaged. So just a thank you to everybody that has stepped up and done things. As Stephan always said, those that you continue to give in your generosity. So just a big thank you to everyone. And a thanks to God ultimately, because He has blessed us.
Yeah. All right, why don't I close our time in prayer? Oh God, we are living in unusual times in so many respects. Whether this pandemic, and as things are easing and we are waiting and there's a sense of optimism and hope in the air, and yet there's some caution and some wondering and waiting. We wonder if this is or I wonder if it's a tipping point in the history with regards to how biracial and indigenous and people of color have been treated and what that will look like in the future. And Jesus, I can't help but think now of what you say in your word, that in Christ, in you, there is neither Jew nor Greek, neither male nor female, neither slave nor Jew, but we are one in you. Some tremendous words there written by the Apostle Paul, some liberating words. What's going to happen now? Oh, Jesus, again, we ask you lead and guide. May we as followers of you be people of peace and reconciliation, because again, you say in your word that you have reconciled the world to yourself, and you have now made us agents of reconciliation. And so what that looks like now for us as your people, to be salt and light in our society. You've called us to a mission. And so we want to do that, to love you and to love others, to make disciples of the whole world. So thank you, Jesus, for going ahead. Thank you for our church family. I think of the first comment here on the chat about how she misses her church family, and we miss being together. And yet we trust you in this time period, and trust you in what you're doing individually in our lives and collectively as a church family. So we follow you, Jesus. In your powerful name we pray. Amen.